Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for our event today. Call for proposals for PyCon US 2023 and Fireside Chat with Python core developer Mariatta. Happy everyone can join us today. I'm going to, do a brief bio of Mariatta. She has over 15 years of experience in the software industry, and she is a Python core developer and contributes to various open source projects. She's been a keynote speaker at various Python conferences around the world, and she currently works as a senior developer relations engineer at Google. For her contributions to the Python community, she has received the Community Service Award from the Python Software Foundation. So here are a few, Python-related facts about Mariatta. So she has been a Python core developer since January 27th, 2017, and was given the commit right to the Python programming language. As a Python core developer, she helps maintain CPython, so a programming language, as well as the tools and GitHub bots used in the CPython's core workflow. So in addition to being a maintainer of CPython, she's also a maintainer of Miss-Islington, cherrypicker.py, GitHub, and AIO-libs. You can read more about her projects on GitHub, github.com/Mariatta. And she is also a co-organizer with PyLadies and the West Coast version of PyCon, PyCascades conference. So Mariatta, the first question I had for you is, can you tell us about your career journey?
But I learned C# as well. And in fact, my first three jobs was using C# and .NET. Um, I think even like I think the fourth job was also I started as C# programmer, C# software developer. But at the time that the project I was hired for ended, and then the company decided they wanted to do something new and exciting at the time. At the time, um, they just started to have to work with um, Google App Engine, which is very new at the time, and using Python and I forgot what's the name, like web app framework. It was a long time. Even Google App Engine changed nowadays. Now we have Google Cloud. So it was interesting. So I learned Python because the job made me use
Learn Python.
Python.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting for me because the first product I worked with Python was Google, and then 10 years later, here I am working at Google. So it's an interesting thing for me.
Yeah, the journey makes
Yeah.
sense. Like, hindsight's 50-50, I think,
Yeah.
or no.
Yeah.
So speaking that you also mentioned Google, do you maybe want to speak briefly about what does like senior developer relations engineer Google does, or what you do, or what typical day?
Sure. I can talk about what I do at Google. I realize that this role, developer relations engineer, is kind of unique to Google. I think even other companies are doing the developer relations differently. So I'll just talk about what I do at Google. So I'm in the Google Cloud, um, what do you call it? Department
Okay.
product.
The
So
team
I'm
within
under Google
the team.
Cloud, and what my team do, we look after the client libraries.
Mm,
Basically, these are also called SDKs for Google Cloud databases. So the client libraries basically are ways to enable our users to use the Google Cloud products easier in their own, in the preferred programming language of choice. So if we have something like we have products like, big tables, Fireside, and data store, those are the databases that my team are looking after. And as the developer relations engineer, we maintain the open source libraries. I maintain the not Java, the Python client libraries for those
sorry.
products. And I have team members, my coworkers, they look after the Java, and they look after Go and Node.js. So it's not just we don't have this SDKs only in Python, but in whatever programming language that people want to use.
Okay. It's really interesting because, like, I don't know. It's like, do you think this role existed 10 years ago? Maybe. It's
I it might be called differently. Like it's
yeah,
in a way it's all it's still software engineering. We write
yeah.
code, but just different focus. Like we're
Mhm,
not really building the product itself.
mhm,
And we for me I work on GitHub and not
mhm.
on private repos. My code that I produce end up published openly on GitHub. So it's different. It's kind of interesting that I get to work and write open source software as you know
It's
as
your
a
day
paid
job.
job. Yeah, because before this I do that for free.
You're doing the side job. Well, you're building your skill set, right? Too. It's like you're
Yeah.
always learning and like
Hmm.
utilizing. But also just like tying back to like with Python. Can you speak more on like what a Python core developer is for people who do not know?
So what a Python core developer basically is just means you have commit right to the CPython to the
Hmm.
Python programming language. So you can propose PRs and merge it yourself. Or meaning if other people create PR to the CPython programming language, as the maintainer I get to review and merge it on their behalf. So that's basically the main responsibility.
You're like, this is what I decided to add to my plate, and like that's all I'm going to work on
Yes,
right now.
it's added responsibility, and I think as a Python core developer, like it's not just about code because we also have documentation, and in order for the in order for the contributor to be able to contribute to Python, we also have to write things like our developer's guide. That's basically our how to contribute to Python, our
Mhm.
documentation on how to contribute to Python. So I actually write very little Python code to Python, but I look after the documentation aspect of it, all the
Mhm.
toolings and infrastructure. And in fact, right now I'm more involved in the documentation work
Mhm.
group or documentation community.
Mhm.
Um, that's just something I care a lot about documentation. So,
Yeah, it's also like a good skill to build. It's like think about it. Someone saying like the hardest task of work is like reading someone else's code, and
mhm.
like Python is like open source. It's like everyone's code in a way, but having the documentation helps the steps.
It's important. And for me as a developer relations, you get to read docs first before they write your code. You
Mhm.
know, before they even decide should I use Python, should I use this function. They don't go and look at the source code, but
Mhm.
the docs first. So the docs is actually important. Then related to that, I want to call out that it's also important that the docs are in the language that you speak, not in
Right.
English. I know not everybody speaks English, and I think it's also important job for the for people who translate Python documentation. And these are done by volunteers actually,
Mhm.
and not by Python core developers. So I
Mhm.
am grateful that there are volunteers out there devoting their time to translate Python documentation.
No, I can. I remember when I looked in the PSF website, they're like translating French and just like other
Hmm.
languages. They have different groups dedicated to it, and obviously Python keeps getting updated, so it's keep updating the doc. It's never ending, but it's like always interesting to read and learn about. So
Hmm.
yeah, and then just also wanted to add. Did you want to share also like your history of like? I know it's like you speak at lots, but like how you decide to become Python core developer, or I can summarize it.
I I didn't know. So it's a long story, but really
We're all here to listen to your long stories.
I think it really I didn't even know there is a thing called Python core developer. I used Python for a long time, But I only started attending Python events or being involved in the communities around 2015. Like I went to Montreal where they had PyCon at that time, and I got financial aid from PyLadies in order to go there. So I'm so grateful for that. So, but in that conference, the keynote says Guido van Rossum gave this keynote saying, "Well, hey, there's no women in the Python core developer team." Um, just a couple days before, they had the Python Language Summit, and it was a room of 50 men. This is the summit where only Python core developers get to come. So a room of 50 men, um, and I guess this fact just have a it impacted me a lot. Like it made me think about it. Like what's going on? Like what is this Python core developer? Like even though at that time I didn't actually think that I want to be a core developer. Like I thought this is a problem, but it's not my problem. And also I don't think I will be ever become a Python core developer. Like it just sounded
So fancy.
I don't know. It just doesn't sound like something I should be doing. It just doesn't sound, just because I never seen anybody else doing this sort of things. Um, so that's what led me think about there is an opportunity to become a Python core developer, but I didn't do anything about it until I didn't do anything until the year after I came back to PyCon again. And I was hoping, I thought I will hear about, hey, who are the new Python core developer? Do we have new women there now? Turns out there's still no women. And
They're
so at
waiting
that
for you,
time,
Mariatta.
yeah, I don't know, maybe. But at the time, Guido said again, like he renewed his offer to mentor people. So I decided to reach out to him. Like I was so scared. I will tell you when I wrote that email, like I want to know about being Python core developer. I was really, really scared. I didn't know him. He don't know me. And
Yeah, and he's like the founder of Python, so like
yeah. And as a I don't know, I just felt like I'm a nobody. I just my life experience at that time, like I don't dare meeting this person, like I was so afraid that maybe he'll reject me or didn't want to do it or whatever, right? But I felt lucky he actually could actually reply, and be, I guess because I knew I understand at that time just how much he was committed into helping to improve diversity in the CPython team. I think it also helped me stay focused and motivated because being just the act of contributing to Python wasn't easy. It's not. It takes a lot of time and energy, like doing whatever it is in order to contribute to Python. But I feel like just because I know there are people like Guido, there are people like Brad Cannon who were helping and um, motivating me, I was able to focus and actually also devote my time for it. So
right, like overcoming
that,
the
that that's the long story.
just like overcoming like the imposter syndrome. You say like, oh, it's
Yeah.
like I'm not a Python expert. Like, should I? And you're just like, okay. But I'll just say like, in my experience, like working with you and seeing what you make it look so easy. I really thought you were the type that says like, say we don't have any women, where it is like challenge accepted. But no. It's just like that's just like how confident and like strong and like well spoken Marietta is now. So I'm like I'm glad like you're there on that team and like as they say representation matters. Like if you had seen someone who was a woman already on that team, you may have like stepped up sooner instead of we're saying like you don't say like dude are you making me repeat myself again at another PyCon conference that we need a woman more women diversity and like we're supported anyways.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
definitely no, I am not an expert, and I think that's one of the reason I felt afraid to reach out to Guido at first. Like I was afraid he will find out that I don't know anything, right? But I learned that it didn't matter. Like as long as I want to do it, he was helping. He wants to help, and I have to take it now.
You're
Yeah.
like, yeah, okay. It's like, let's do it. And you're so amazing now, right? But I know it's like, we're all human, superhuman, Marietta. Yeah. I guess another thing, I know, did you have another core developer event this year? I think, like, if people want to look up or learn more about like what happens
Um,
there.
I think no more this year.
Okay.
But I can say what happened this year. We did
Okay.
have the Python language summit, which I talked about earlier. I yeah, the twist of events. A few years after becoming Python core developer, I end up being the chair of Python language summit. Like from hearing that, hey, there is no women there, and I become the lead of this whole event. So it's something I'm proud of.
Yeah.
So this year we have the language summit, but it was after 4 years of organizing it.
Mhm.
It this was my last year doing that. But at the
Mhm.
summit, we basically all the core developers came. We not all, a lot of the core developers
Okay.
came. We talk about what's coming. We talk about a lot of issues or big changes
Mhm.
in Python coming up. Talk about lazy imports. That's something I remember. There's a lot of things. It's a whole day event.
Yeah.
Um, we also have a core developer sprint. That's
Mhm.
where we not only we meet, we would go in person for a week where we
Mhm.
all try to. It's like it's a sprint. We
Yeah.
make pull requests. We meet, discuss things. I get to talk. I get to learn about async IO more because that's a topic that I'm interested in. I want to learn more about it, but also the fact that async IO doesn't have has very few active maintainers, even though
Mm.
it's one of the most, you know, it's one of the library people want to use a lot these days. There's a lot of
Mm.
appetite for using async IO. Um, so I attended a meeting, like almost all day meeting. We talk about async IO
Yeah.
stuff. So I was learning. It was
Yeah.
interesting. Um, but those are the two main events for the core Python this year.
Sounds like a lot of fun and just like if you don't know a lot of stuff like you learn a lot fast because everyone's learning at the same
I
time.
definitely learned a lot even as a Python core developer, and I
Mhm.
felt lucky that I get to learn from the
Yeah.
people who make Python directly. And I know them now. Like they never laugh at me for not knowing Python. Like they
No.
are all very supportive. Like
Oh.
I ask very basic questions about. I remember I was posting on Discord. I felt I felt embarrassed for myself for not knowing this.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
how do I profile
Mhm.
an async code? Like, I thought as a code developer I'm supposed to know everything, but I didn't.
Yeah.
And they answered me. I got answers from Lukash and Greg. So
No, everyone's supportive,
I'm
knowledge
learning.
sharing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess another topic we could ask. Speaking like with open source, what do you think is like biggest challenge open source is facing right now?
I there's a lot of challenge, but the one thing I'm focusing about is the issue of governance. Um,
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of open source libraries that we depend on, even you know Python for a long time, it was all like Guido van Rossum was the BDFL, and what happened when he retired. And there are other examples like that, where a library that is owned by or maintained by one or two people, something you depend on, like what happened if these persons wanna take a vacation or wanna retire or need to focus on their family and can no longer maintain the library. So this is something I think about governance and succession planning for open source projects, and what can we do or what can companies do to help. Um,
Right, like I know one example right now is like a lot of the banks run on COBOL data and
mhm,
Fortran, and like I don't think we learned that in school, Mariatta, for COBOL. And just like recognizing like the knowledge sharing, right? And just like as you said, succession planning. Like Goodo, I think
mhm.
he retired and then came out of retirement, retired again. I'm not sure. I'm having trouble keeping track of his plans. But yeah, it's like also that knowledge. Like how do we download that knowledge and share it to the next generation that will help like succession planning, just like keeping everything running. You know?
Yeah, and I think when I mentioned governance, it's also about how can the community contribute to it.
Mhm.
Like I feel like so far, or a lot of programming, a lot of libraries, if they are owned by one or two people, how how can community who depend on it can also influence the decision within
Mhm.
this project? Like, how do we know these few people who own or have the commit right to it
Mhm.
will look after the needs of the people who actually use it? That's I don't have solution. This is just
Yeah.
something I think is a problem that I am learning, and I am seeing how different communities are handling this.
It's like always a good conversation to have and like have that question in mind. I guess that's
Mm-hmm.
similar what to that XKCD comic where it's like the big tower and there's like that little thing that's like
Mm-hmm.
might make it all fall down. Like
Yeah.
Jenga.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah. I've never really thought about that with open source. I notice like sometimes projects get abandoned or just like not knowing like what's going to happen to it like in the future. But yeah, just for that succession planning, because that's I think a lot of people just use it and just like don't really think about, oh, I can also
Mm-hmm.
like actively participate and like help build and create it. So,
Exactly, and I think that's also something I didn't know even. Like I said this in my keynote for Python Brazil. Like I for the longest time I thought, well, Python is made by Apple. It must have like paid engineers to do this, because I when I used Python, it was on my MacBook. It was just there. I didn't need to download anything. Just
wow.
it was there, right? So I thought, it's a product of Apple,
Yeah.
but it's an open source
Mhm.
project, and not only open source. It's written by maintained by volunteers, and because it's volunteers, we as users actually have the ability to contribute and to influence the
Right,
decisions.
to have a say.
We just need to know how. We need to know where is the issue tracker, right?
Right. And you're saying to like
Mm-hmm.
like Apple, it's like it already came into like a lot of large companies are just like using Python, not only just like you as an individual, in smaller
Mm-hmm.
companies. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. So do we want to maybe move on to the topic of like PyCon US?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Um questions. Do you want to do like what is PyCon?
All right.
People may
Yes,
not know.
PyCon. Yes, PyCon is the largest and longest running Python conference in the world. So this year, well, this coming year, we're gonna be celebrating 20 years of PyCon. So what exactly how PyCon events look like? It is a long, I think it's even 2 weeks long event.
Yeah.
The first 2 days of PyCon, you will see tutorials, um, and also some of the education summits are also happening in the first 2 days. After the tutorial days, we will have 3 days of talks. So 3 full days of multi-track talks. You'll hear plenty of talks, technical and non-technical, community-related talks, but Python-related talks. And after the talks, after the tutorials and the talks, there will be the that's when we have the sprints, the open source sprints. So there will be opportunity for you to come in, meet other open source maintainers who happen to be there, and they can help you, guide you into contributing to open source projects. And on top of that, there are also expo halls where that's where you see our sponsors and community booths. You get lots of swag, like just walk around the expo hall, get lots of swag, like free t-shirts and everything, and talk to our sponsors and thank them.
I just want to add, I know like I'm gonna try to imagine PyCon, like it's big, but like how many attendees, like how big is like the building, like
It's the
visualized?
whole conference. I think usually before COVID times, it was a few thousand people. Like
Wow.
I remember in the I think we had the whole in Portland. It was the whole conference center was booked for
Wow.
PyCon.
Okay.
It was it's huge
It's
and
huge,
it
yeah.
will be overwhelming. I remember my first time attending PyCon. The first day, the first day I tried to attend to all the talks. I didn't want to miss anything because I felt like this is such an opportunity. Like I
It's a
got
valuable
financial aid
opportunity.
to come here. I want to make the most of it. So by the second day, not even noon, I was just so tired. I was exhausted, also jet lagged.
Yeah.
Because it was in Montreal, I was in
Yeah.
Vancouver. um, it's I feel like even this year when I returned to PyCon the first time after 2 years remote, it felt overwhelming to suddenly see a lot of people again. Um, but it was fun. Like I really missed seeing people and just talk instead of typing. I it's not an experience that can be replicated through video calls. It's just
Yeah, the
it's
interactive,
hard.
like human
Yeah,
human
just
approach.
being
Yeah.
able to walk randomly and meet, like, see somebody in the hallway and just say hi and just start chatting. Yeah, it's still something I can't do on even on
Online.
Discord or anything. Like it's just different
Different
kind of
vibe.
energy. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, I know like Piley is really great those opportunities. I think Woman to Go with Python's been around 3 years, so we need to catch up. But yeah, I would like love to see like more opportunities like for people who want to attend. I think does PyCon have the diversity scholarships where you like apply to attend, or is it
Yes,
depends? Yeah.
there we do have financial aids. We call them travel grants,
Okay.
and there is specific travel grants for PyLadies members. So if you self-identify saying I want to receive travel grants from PyLadies, there's a checkbox for you, but you don't have to be a PyLady in
Right.
order to eligible for travel grants to PyCon. So there is a general travel grants from anyone who needs it. And even for speakers, like if your talk got accepted, but you don't have, maybe your company is sponsoring you to travel, you need some funding to do that, you can request grants because we want you to be able to come and present your talk.
Yeah, we
So,
want as many people to learn more, even learning Python
mhm.
first time.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah.
For the travel grants. So definitely, if you think doesn't matter who you are, if you think you need some grants in order for you to come
Mhm.
wherever you are in the world, just apply for it and
Yeah.
let the travel grants figure out whether you should receive your
Yeah.
funds. So don't hesitate to apply. The applications should open up by the end of this year. Like if not the end of
Okay.
this month, soon we
Right.
will have it. So
And also, I guess I could also ask you, Marietta, like, what kind of talks like are you looking for, interested in? I know it's different, like per conference. So.
Um, I can say what I've seen at PyCon and what I like about it.
Hmm.
This year we have really good, lots of highly technical talks.
Okay.
Even if the talks is about Python, even though I know these things exist, but hearing users use this, you know, whatever new feature that we just put out and explain, just give the walkthrough of it, explain their unique use case of this, of how they use Python is always interesting to me. Um, I also really like, I hear a talk from Mason Eager. He talked about documentation,
Hmm.
like 10
Yeah.
tips on how to write documentation. I really, really like that. It's very useful, even though I know some of this, but hearing someone validating what I thought about documentation is still very useful. So
Okay.
my advice is this: even if you know, like somebody else gave this talk already, or you think that nobody will want to hear this, there will be people who want to hear it.
Yeah.
So just submit a talk, whatever it is. I'm also interested to learn more about, like I said, if you have talked about
Hmm.
how you manage community, that's something I will attend. I want to learn from you because the community is important to me. Um, Other things that could be interesting are just because we have hearing about open source security vulnerabilities these days. It'll be interesting to hear, like to learn from all of this. Um, Maybe if people have specific stories related to
Hmm.
security and vulnerabilities, I think that can help the rest of us do better next time, or how do we avoid these kinds of things going forward. It's just something I'm always interested in. Um, yes, typically, if your talk has anything to do about Python, just submit it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, like, if you also look up online, there's a video of you like showing how to like create your CFP and submit it somewhere.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, definitely. Check out if you go to PyCon website,
Mhm.
us.pycon.org
Mhm.
2023,
Mhm.
there is a page just for the guidelines on how
Mhm.
to on what you need to put in your proposals. So for PyCon, you have to understand we receive way more proposals than we have talk slots on. A lot of people want to talk to speak at PyCon. So just understand you don't need to be the expert or
Mhm.
the CTO of something or whatever. You don't need to already be famous in order to speak at
Mhm.
PyCon. I wasn't famous. I'm not famous,
Now you're
but
famous, Mariana.
I did.
Yeah.
I gave talks at PyCon 5 years, so
Mhm.
I know what it takes. You just really have to set your proposals aside from other people. And one of the things that the reviewers will want to look for is just understanding that you really know what you're talking about. They want to see your expertise on this,
Mhm.
and so your proposal really needs to be a little bit more detailed.
Mhm.
Um, so at PyCon, you need to provide like a kind of an outline of your talk. So it's not just the abstract that they want to see. They want to see how you plan to deliver the talk. Like these are the main points you will talk about. So not just I will talk about library X, but also this is library X. This is the good ways of using library X. This is how you can download it or whatever. But also talk about when you should not use this, or also talk about why you need to use X instead of something else. What happens if you don't use X? What happens if you use Y instead of X? Like, be more detailed about it. It will give
Help the reviewer.
an
Yeah.
idea. Yes,
Yeah.
it gives the reviewer confidence that you are an expert on library X, that you
Yeah.
really know everything about it. And it will help them feel confident that, yes, let's put this speaker on the show, you know. So,
Yeah, like
so that's, mhm.
the audience takeaways and what they'll be learning from the talk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I felt I was also reviewing a lot of proposals in the past, not anymore. But I sometimes when I see, sometimes people just give the abstract, like just a paragraph or two, and not enough details. And the thing is, I think even for me, like the first time I submitted a talk, I thought, hey, if they want more details, they will ask me, right? They will not just say no to my proposals, but really, if you don't put enough details in the first place, they will not ask you. Like
Because there's a
just because
lot. Yeah.
there's a lot of things to review. There were a few hundred. It might be close to 1,000 proposals. I think when
Yeah.
I was reviewing, helping to review years ago, it was at least 300 proposals to go through. So unfortunately, we can't leave
Keep up.
feedback to all of them. So one of the ways you can improve your chances of getting accepted is just to start with really good, pretty detailed proposal to begin with. Um, so that's my advice.
Okay. And I've seen, I know it depends on the conference, but sometimes you can see like the description of previous talks. You kind of have like an idea of like the flow to follow and like the action verbs and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's also another thing. If you see other people's talk, sometimes what you see in the program is just it's just the abstract. You don't see the outline. So you really want to see examples of past PyCon proposals. And there are actually, I think if you go to PyCon website, there used to be a repository of people who share their
Cool.
actual PyCon proposals, and they will also share whether this was accepted or not. So it gives you an idea of what kind of proposals can get accepted
Yeah,
at
like
PyCon.
examples and like
Hmm.
demos. Okay. This
Yeah,
is like
I if it's not in the PyCon, I can share the link later. But
okay.
I remember there's something I also checked out in my early when I started speaking. That there are people sharing that, saying that this is what I wrote. They will say this was not accepted, or yes, this proposal was
That's
accepted.
accepted.
You know,
Yeah.
so it really helped knowing just
The
how
format.
to
Yeah.
write. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you also, you enjoy documentation, so I'm sure you enjoyed writing it too. Maybe.
I care about writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess like a last question I'll have about PyCon. Are there other ways to be involved at PyCon or with PSF or Python
Sure.
general?
Yes.
No.
Well, for PyCon itself, we will need volunteers.
Okay.
So you can get involved in person. There will be later on, like I think closer to the event, we will be putting out call for volunteers always. So you can help by becoming session chairs or bringing the speakers from the
Yeah.
green room to the uh, to the talk room. You can also be the MC introducing the speakers. So those are those kinds of volunteering opportunity. But we also have other ways to participate. For example, even the talk reviewers, you can sign up if you're interested in helping out and review like 300, 400 proposals, even more. You can sign up to be in the reviewer committee. I believe there is a form on that. If it's not on the PyCon website, just ask me. I will point it out to you. The link. There is also another opportunities we are looking for new this year. Um, Totally brand new role. Like we need someone who can look after the online aspect of PyCon because we will be hybrid as well. There will
Nice.
be in person. There will be in person conference for sure, but the we have the online platform for it where people can join remotely and watch the videos. And we realized that we can't handle both
Right.
in-person conference and online conference at the same time. So we are looking for people who will be able to look after the online aspect of
Aspect.
it. And it is called the online experience volunteer. So if you think this is something that you want to do, please do sign up and help with this.
So it's on
And
like,
the yeah, the form is online already. Like we are still looking for people who wants to do this. us.pycon.org.
.org. Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
.org.
I know, and on Twitter they're called the PSF. So THE PSF, not to mix them up with like Pacific Salmon Federation, which is PSF on Twitter.
Yes,
I think it's
in
like
Vancouver.
yes, I know. I think it's like I see online like the Python Soccer Foundation sends like swag to like Pacific Salmon, so it's like we don't feel bad about being in their mentions all the time.
Yeah,
um, but yeah,
yeah.
but yeah, I know it's like. Is there a newsletter?
I think we are still on Twitter for now.
Okay.
We have I think the PSF has started being on Mastodon.
Ooh, okay.
So
On an
go
instance.
check out. Yeah, we are on the postodon.org.
Okay.
Um, but I think just the PSF. Um, we will still sharing updates on PyCon Twitter. So if you add PyCon, that is the official Twitter account for PyCon US.
Okay. Yeah, because there's
Um,
like a lot of different PyCon
mhm.
conferences always going on. This something interesting. So
Yeah.
we mentioned one like how to get more involved with PyCon. Do you want to discuss also how to get involved with the PSF, the Python Software Foundation?
So for being involved in the PSF, there are actually lots of different opportunities, and it really depends what you want to do. Like it's hard for me to say unless you tell me like I want to do documentation or I want to do something. If you tell me that, I will be able to direct with the right work group because there are specific you know groups
Groups, yeah.
focusing on things. So I think it's important for you to know what you would like to do.
Mhm.
However, at the very basic, I really encourage you to become a member of the PSF. And if you do a lot of volunteering within the community, say if you contribute to open source projects, or um, if you manage events or meetups, you're hosting people on podcasts like this, you can apply to become a contributing or managing member of the PSF, which lets you vote in the upcoming PSF election, Board of Directors election. And I want to explain that as a member of the PSF, if you are invested in our community, if you have opinions or thoughts of how the Python community can be better, you want to vote for the candidate who you think will be able to address your concerns, who will
Yeah.
look after, who will represent your voice. So become a member and then become a voting member.
Mhm.
And if you really have strong opinion about how Python community can be better, things we should be doing, you
Speak up. Yeah.
speak up, or you can also become a running the board, like
Mm.
candidate
Why not?
yourself. Yeah. That and it doesn't take well, okay, I want to say it doesn't take a lot, but it does take a lot. But meaning you can do this. Like
Mhm.
it's I used to think that there is no way I will become a Python code developer. There is no way I will chair a conference or speak at a conference even. Like it was all of this used to be just a dream that I thought only super smart, super famous people will be selected to do this. But in fact, if I just raise my hand and say, I want to do it, there are people who will help you through this path.
Mhm.
Like, I really have a lot of people helping me finding opportunities within the Python community. And it also comes from because I show up, I come to events. That's how they know that I am interested in this kind of things.
Mhm.
So if you do have strong opinion, you want
Mhm.
to help, be a member and participate. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I know you're one of those like super famous, super smart people, Mariatta.
no, no, no,
No, I'm not one of them yet. No.
no.
I know it's just like there's always a lot of conferences going on now, so you're just like picking what you can and can't because you also have a
I
day job, right?
yes. Now I try to limit my involvement. I
Yes.
realize I keep thinking I'm not the right person to look up for because I I did too many things. It burned me down.
Mhm.
Um, I had to stop
Oh, it's yeah, self
and
care during
yeah,
pandemic. Yeah, a lot of stuff going
yeah.
on. I feel like we've also touched on like how to get involved with like the Python language. Was there anything else you like to add for that? You said like show up, speak, learn. I know like
Yeah,
our community is a lot of beginner, intermediate, or they're trying to find their first Python role or trying to use Python to work. So,
I say even being, I really could recommend you try contributing to open source projects.
mhm.
If I and I say this because I hear from people who also say, "Oh, I'm not good enough yet. I don't wanna
Mm,
contribute to open source. I'm so scared of that." But
mhm,
contributing to open source itself is a learning experience. Like
mhm,
I learned a lot. But when I start contributing, I didn't know how to write documentation in
mhm.
restructured text. I never write documentation before even. Like it just
They should
we
teach us
don't
that
write.
in school, Won't
No,
happen
they
yet,
didn't. Right?
yeah.
Even at work, we thought, well, technical writers write documentation.
Yeah.
I write code, right?
Mhm,
But here I am now. I write documentation for Python. I learned all of this because of contributing to Python. I didn't know how to publish things to PyPI before.
mhm,
I didn't I never published anything on PyPI. None of my work was open source.
mhm,
But after contributing that I learned how to package, I learned to publish, I learned how PyPI really works.
mhm,
I learned how to write GitHub bots because of
mhm,
Python, not because of my work.
mhm,
All of these are have been learning experience for me. So I think you shouldn't wait until you know everything
mhm.
before you start contributing to open source. So use it as a learning as a way to learn.
And like baby steps, like do what you can, learn more, and like there's always like
Hmm.
stuff more to learn about or like resources
Yeah,
and people to reach out to.
And another advice I would say is you don't have to start with, core Python. Like, 'cause it can be, yes, it can be hard. I know you can do it,
Mhm.
but if you just wanna practice contributing, you might find it easier or might get your PRs accepted easier in other projects.
Mhm.
And sometimes you'll ask, so what other projects should I contribute to?
Mhm.
Just look at whatever library you're depending on.
Mhm.
So your own project, that whatever code you use, do a pip freeze,
Mhm.
and you'll see the dependencies, right? You see
Mhm.
it will show you your requirements. You use Django or you use Pylon or whatever. You use some random um, library. Contribute to those. Those are likely also open source and that are also accepting PRs. So if you are using it, you probably should care about the features is being
Mhm.
added there. So contributing is a way for you to help the project that you are already using.
Yeah, to help and learn and show your
Hmm.
work, right? That you're
Hmm.
contributing. Yeah, these are great. Thank you so much, Marietta. I'm just gonna move on Q&A. I know someone's, let's see. So this may have been like asked during an earlier part of the event, but someone was asking, profiling their code is something they don't do at their job currently. Um, do you have any suggestions on someone learning how to do that, or?
I think this is a great question. I also didn't know much about profiling. Like it's just not never something I had to know about. So I learned how to use. So Python itself comes with a built-in profiler, so
Mhm.
which you can just run. You didn't have to install anything special. It's
Mhm.
called CProfile. So just look up on the. I can't give tutorial about it because I'm also learning about it. But I did find a lot of resources on how to use CProfile, which is built in. Basically, when you call CProfile, pass in the functions, it will tell you like there is like different columns that tells you the call stack, how much time spent on certain methods.
Mhm.
So it helps you identify which part of your code is slow. So C profile is something you should know about. Additionally, there is when you use C profile, you can export the data.
Mhm.
And my IDE, the IDE I use, PyCharm, you can use the export profiling data. Like there is a menu for that. It will visualize it better. So you might wanna investigate if your profiling or your IDE have ways to visualize profiling data. Another library that I ended up using as well, not just C profile, is called Yappy, YAPPI.
Mhm.
It gives out different kind of profiling information. So you might wanna check out both the C profile and Yappy. I found Yappy has more useful stats. We ended up using it instead of C profile. So check them out both.
Okay. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to post them in the chat or Q&A, and Marietta will answer what she can. So say like when you're interviewing, is like at your company or your teams at the different places you worked at, when you're interviewing someone like who um, has their like Python in their skill set, like what do you look for? Um,
Um, it's So first of all, we do want to see you write code. I know this sounds bad. I am actually in my previous job I do get to interview people. Sometimes I didn't need to know a lot. Like I didn't need them to produce a big
Mhm.
project, but if they understand, they can use the Python syntax. They know how to use strings. Like if they do the if they understand algorithm or data structures, that's good enough. I always felt like if we are hiring a newcomer, it is understood they don't have a lot of work experience.
Mhm.
But if they show that they can communicate with us,
Mhm.
they have basic understanding about classes, you know,
Mhm.
or data structure. They know how to try catch exceptions. Like those things actually are good enough for me. But I don't know about other companies though. Like
Mhm.
I felt I do feel interviewing is something that can be improved.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah,
know it's like some technical interviews like whiteboarding or technical interview questions, but really it's like how you work with the team. How do you solve the problem?
I
How do you
think
know?
I
Yeah.
think being able to communicate is
Mhm.
more important, and
Mhm.
being able to ask questions. Like if during the interview they ask you to do something, and if you don't dare to ask back clarifying questions,
Mhm.
I think that's worse than not knowing how to code.
Yeah.
Like they want they just want to know that they will be able to work with you and that you don't hesitate to ask for help. You will ask help if you are in order to be unblocked, in order to progress in your work.
Mhm.
Those are more important, at least in my opinion.
Okay. Well, that's good to know because you've worked at a lot of like different companies and worn like different hats, so you've probably seen like various levels of like Python experience.
Yeah, and I think that's something the interviewers should know, like what they want
Mhm.
out of the candidate, and I think they don't always know it. If they are looking for a new, like there's a way to determine expertise or seniority,
Mhm.
someone who's been programming for a long time, they might know more about some gotchas, or they might know more about best practices
Mhm.
compared to the person who just learned Python a year ago, right? And I think sometimes it's not about knowing how good you are at Python, but how good you are at learning
Mhm. Yeah.
and how long have you been doing that. So,
Yeah. Okay. These are all great. Awesome. Thank you so much, Mariana, for the talk and the invitation. I don't see any other Q and A's, so I'll go to our fun closing questions. Uh, so, yeah. Oh, thanks for joining us, Rachel. What are you passionate about outside of work? I know I mentioned before this call started about your guitar. You can
oh,
see it in like
that's
the side of the screen.
what I'm passionate about. Oh, I don't. I'm a foodie. I
I,
really like food and traveling. And when I travel, I will ask, where do I go for food? That's my passion. So, content warning.
Did you I've seen you've been posting a few pictures on maybe Twitter, Instagram. Have you eaten anything very delicious lately? You went to like PyCon Brazil, so
Ah, yes, I went to Brazil and I get to try. So the place I went to Brazil is in the state of Amazonas, so in the city of Manaus, and I learned that that area is kind of very different compared to the rest of Brazil, and Brazil is huge, by the way. But this area have their own kind of cuisine. They
mhm.
use fish like freshwater river fish, the fish that grow that yeah that lives
The river versus
in
the ocean. Yeah.
the river there that
Yeah.
flows right there. So I get to eat a lot of freshwater fish while there, like
Nice.
different types of cooking it in a stew, deep fried, and they have something that is it's fried, or I think it's baked.
Okay.
So like they cut up the whole fish, which is this big. It's really big, like this.
Wow.
They cut up in the middle and they stuffed it with things, and then they baked the whole thing. So it's very interesting to see.
You see,
Yeah.
I'm thinking like, oh, it's like a turducken.
Uh,
But it's like the fish
yeah.
version.
No, yes, but fish. I
The
forgot
fish,
what it's
yes.
called. But the fish
Okay.
is called, I think it's called tambaki. Tambaki,
Okay.
that's the name of the fish. Yeah, it's
Sounds
a
really
kind of,
delicious.
it was interesting.
You had seconds,
I
right?
liked it.
Yeah.
I think I tried the same fish in different restaurants in like
Oh,
4 different restaurants.
nice.
It's really a local cuisine there.
That's okay. So thank you. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone who stuck with us for the full entirety of this event. I hope you enjoyed learning a lot with Mariatta and like all the questions like Python stuff. And yeah, I really hope to see Mariatta like back again like soon. Well, after you've like recovered, maybe next year for like another event with the Python community. So yeah. All right. Okay, so I'll end the call. So bye everyone. Thank you, Mariatta.